Birkeland currents probably have some sort of a property where they break down mathematically into each other into their smaller recursions. And I've tagged David and shared a couple of things on David's Facebook. If you could go to it, you can see the type of geometry of filaments and filament geometry, because that's really what we're talking about. And it gets into crystallography as well.
Well, there is definitely truth to that. If you look at the older pictures of, say, the nebula, the pillars of creation, or any of those, we used to think of them as, well, you can even tell by watching old sci-fi, like from The Wrath of Khan. We thought that they were smooth, lovely clouds and whatever. And then we got even more resolution, and we realized that they are literally just filaments, as we see. And they do break down into smaller and smaller filaments. Welcome to the September 25th edition of the Electric View. I'm Neil Thompson. Today we have Dave, Jim, Robert, Buddy, Heather, Edwin, Cameron, and Richard. We will be talking about Birkeland Currents, Alfven Waves, and frequency scaling in our new electric universe. Please like and subscribe. We should probably see that in the solar wind. We should see that in Birkeland Currents that are powering the sun and so forth. And even we see prominences that are looping. We see that they are also made of smaller filaments inside of that. So I bet you it's a thing.
The one thing that I'm getting really strongly about a lot of this stuff is this duality between our perception of 3 dimensions and our perception of 2 dimensions, and this hexagonal relationship. This is a classic construct, right, where the hexagon can look like a cube if you're looking on it, down the diagonal or orthogonally, right? To be specific about it, but just, how you can look at a hexagon and see a cube in there, right?
Anyone who's drawn them as a kid.
Cubert or whatever, right? There's all kinds of...
Oh my God, yes, Crab and Cubert, completely. But you're right, absolutely.
Right. But this is a very interesting thing, and we're looking at the some of the things that have come up into under the radar is this sexagesimal system that was used by the Babylonians. And ultimately, the trig that they were doing is really sophisticated. And this is, we have this perception of, all this stuff came out of, it's usually the Greeks, and then there's some, but anything before that was totally primitive. But you start thinking about what sexagesimal was, and then this instead of our orthogonal axes, the Descartesian ones, this one holds both aspects. It holds the 2-dimensional aspect and the 3-dimensional aspect simultaneously in an interesting way, in a different way than we're used to. So
they freaked out because it was their first illusion they've ever saw.
Is it an illusion? Yeah, right, exactly.
I could imagine that.
Is it an illusion, though? Which is the illusion?
I was just thinking of the hexagon to a square on the top of Saturn. If that was a
exactly.
thing.
Right. Here's a prime example of it naturally, right? And you see it in petals and flowers. This is one of the forms that you see, obviously, right? That's anyway, playing around with that, and that's where we led to. But I've been looking at just some variations in some of them. So harmonic resonance, right?
Hey, David, if there's any way you could go to your Facebook, the stuff we're talking about.
I'll stay away from Facebook.
Yeah.
I know. I'm anti-Facebook. Yeah.
Please.
So, it's I
shared them on your page.
I don't go
there. Facebook, in MySpace.
MySpace? Yeah, MySpace for
without the music for my page.
Yeah.
Well, everyone thinks they're cool and they went to Instagram, but it's the same platform, so whatever.
I don't even see the benefit of Instagram.
I don't either.
I mean, don't get me wrong. When I'm taking pictures of, let's say, whatever I'm doing while wandering around outside somewhere, that's kind of nice. Like when we were all the pictures I'm recently sharing of our trip there, Robert. Like it's like, hey, that's the Cadillac up ahead. When it says searching for three fingers, all that is a repeat of my Instagram post because it was just easier to do because my telephone it was really crap back then, and I would have to load into Facebook and then take a picture, and then if I just went to Instagram, it would only have to load one program, and it was that Chinese spying company ZTE that gave me the phone, so that was nice. The Chinese know all about us.
You got to go to your page. I know you don't use it that much, but you got to go to your page.
Can they really do what?
Neil can get a free portrait of Queen Elizabeth.
Of course.
Wow.
I'm a member of the Commonwealth.
Wow.
Without question.
Without question. Doesn't even require shipping.
I want to live there.
Although my friend said, I want to get a new dartboard. Send one to me. So. But it's you can also request things like a copy of the Constitution, all the law stuff. It's all free to anyone if they want a copy of it.
How nice of them.
Well, it's kind of makes sense that you should. The Queen stuff. I mean, you got it. She is technically the monarch, the ruler, but she doesn't. What is she? She reigns but doesn't rule because she can't actually do anything.
She's like a vassal.
She's like a living symbol, I guess. And I'm kind of with Stephen Fry on that because could you imagine if in the United States someone had to go to the Lincoln Memorial and bow down in front of him or something, and then recognize that you are only a servant of the symbol, and you must, that kind of thing. I don't know. There's a certain, I don't know, there's something, it works, I guess, in a way. It keeps people grounded. I don't know if it would work in the United States or whatever. It's just an idea, but, that type of thing. I can see it.
You can? Yeah.
Well, no, it would basically, could you imagine if someone was like, I'm not bowing down to him, I'm not for him. You would go, wait. So you're not for us? You're a dickhead then. We don't like you. Like that type of thing. Would sort of, breed out that type of thing, or maybe instill it. I don't know. It seems to work there though. So, and we're not as openly that way. I mean, we're happy when they show up, and when we will, go visit them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still blown away that I still am very proud that I met the future king, and I met his, I guess, his dead wife. I guess.
Okay.
Well, it's
always
just
nice.
sad.
Always nice to meet a dead wife.
She was wearing yellow. She was so pretty. I was 5 or 6.
See what you're impressed with.
Well, who wouldn't be? Your mother's you're going to get dressed up, but it's not even Sunday. Fuck that. You're getting dressed up, You're coming with me.
I've seen dressed up.
Well, yeah, but to me, okay, I mean, we lived, nowhere,
I understand. It's a focal point of ostentation.
Yeah, well, heck, when I was traveling, I was 14, and we went on a trip from here to Toronto, and this will be my last story. They got me dressed up to get on the plane. We were no, this is a big deal. We're traveling on a plane. Okay, it's a big deal.
Yeah,
it is still an event, and I was like, okay,
yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, be on your best behavior. This is all a big deal. I guess that's all she had to do. When I think about it, she was like, "This is a big deal," and I apparently acted like it was a big deal. I don't know where I learned that, but
right.
Don't beat up your cousin
pomp
anymore.
And circumstance are impressive.
Yeah. I kind of like a little, things that are supposed to be respectful, like churches and stuff like that. If I met somebody, I think maybe it's in grade. I remember an episode of it was a Canadian on that Stargate Atlanta show, and he's staying there all stiff and straight, looking straight, and then you can tell everyone around is really excited that something happened, and he goes, and she's just mocking him. She kind of goes, "Calm down, doctor, you're embarrassing me." And he's staying there with his jaw clenched. He goes, "I've never been this excited in my entire life." Like, and he's standing perfectly still. I don't know if that's a thing. I don't know, but I can picture it. Anyway, more on these interferences. And how are you?
So yeah. I mean,
if you
go to
my your page,
I got to figure out how to get to mine.
It's up at the top.
Yeah. Okay, here we go.
Yep.
Okay, here we go.
Yep. 2 things I shared for
Figured
you.
It out.
So this gets into filament geometry, and I think that I'm going to start electric universe geometry, either that or electric universe math. I like geometry better because it's more solid.
Uh-huh.
I like it.
This is what it leads to. I mean, with Donald Scott, as an advocate, I want to make this as nice and presentable, and literally these are the transmission lines of how these Birkeland currents break down into smaller and smaller Birkeland currents, with all different chirality, and which is the spin from left or right, with negentropic and entropic features. So you can see it's cylindrical. And if you click on the images, David, click starting with the first one. That's how it's broken down. And that's just one inside of the system at one specific radius.
Right. Yeah, and you're working on like a 12 symmetry on that?
Exactly, yep.
So which is like a 6 ultimately.
It
right?
is. It's the same, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So the one that's interesting is the 8. And then you get into these. The radial symmetries are really pretty. To me, that's as the kind of dog with his nose in the air. It's like those low whole number symmetries radially are really interesting.
Speaking of vibrations and so forth, we should probably, if you're into this, buddy, one of the big things you should probably also really study up on is Alfven waves. They're vibrations in plasma. You can see some of them in experiments, but you can also see them in the northern lights as they go by. You can sort of see vibrations, and even you can see them in the rings of Saturn. You can see ripples go across them sometimes, like waves. And AF. Well, yeah, you'll get it, I'm sure. There's a V in it.
It's a V. Alvin, yeah.
Alfven, V-E-N. Yeah. But there's an F too. There, you got it. You got it. It's right there. Yeah.
Almost. That's not it. I saw it. There we go.
There he is.
Come on, give me the link. There's the link. Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, his waves, they're basically like sound waves in plasma because they're like a ripple. They can travel through tubes and so forth, but they're not an electromagnetic wave. They're more akin to a sound wave. And they can, and of course, then there's the Coulomb, the idea of scalar waves or charge waves. And it's just, there's a lot of ideas in this. This is just being explored. The idea that maybe the ancients used these as communication towers, like a pyramid. If they could control the vibration inside of a pyramid, they could control the ripple that went down to the next pyramid if they were connected in lines. That picture right there with the tubes that are all bent, that's Alfven waves right there.
Which one?
That one with the golden
This one?
tubes. That's in Wikipedia. I bet you that if you visit that page, it's Alfven Waves. See? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, this is where it brings up and kind of ties all together, where you start looking at morphic resonance, and you start looking at cymatics and Birkeland currents and all this stuff.
This is why I can't deny what you guys talk about. Because if I did, I'd have to deny these things exist. It's just
this is where
silly
we're
they
learning.
do exist.
So it's all in inquiry. So I'm not going to present myself as some type of expert on anything. So.
Bullshit! You are the expert. I
I'm
can't
not an
VR
expert
anything.
at all. I mean, this is the beauty. One of the beauties of like just the studying like the Greeks a little bit is Socrates' position, and it's like the thing I realize is that I know absolutely nothing.
That's a good place to start.
And then one of his things that he loved doing is just popping everyone's ego and convincing them they didn't know, they knew less than him. So. But that was his starting point, and it's playful. It's a little dangerous, of course.
It's also similar to
it's freeing because you don't have to put yourself up on a pedestal.
It's also similar to Buddhist masters, the type of thing where it's like they walk in and it's like, well, I want this, I want that, and goes, what can you do for me? Well, I can remove your need to want things, like that type of thing, like.
Right.
Right. You don't understand the problem that you're having is basically
right. It's not the thing you want. It's that you want it.
Yeah. That's a mental thing, but at the same time, it's like basically how do I calm my mind and get a grip on my life? Well, you don't even realize how much you don't have a grip on your life. You think you have it all, and you think that,
right.
But you're so far beyond the guy sitting there, with. On the floor that's not doing anything is way further ahead than you are in the pursuit of happiness, and he's just a poor guy.
It's a big paradox.
It is. It's also a beautiful one.
I think that we face ultimately. So
I think it was Jesus did the whole thing with the camel eye of the needle rich man thing.
Yeah.
Philosophically,
that eye of the needle. That's a hard one to get through. It's an interesting metaphor geometrically, because it's scalar.
If you're smart, if you're
all about scale.
Some rich guy said, "So what you're saying is, I need to make a pureed camel, yes, in a straw and just squirt it through."
Cool. Yeah. So, I mean, I think to me, see this illustration. This strikes me as incorrect. Okay, because of the scaling as you come down, they've got like a spatial frequency that decreases along the way. See how the wavelength changes along here?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It seems to me that it's the opposite, right? That these would be much tighter, and then these are wider. Right?
Well, I think that has to do with the closest to the magnetic field. Like as you get closer to a pole, for lack of a better term, the field lines. I know they don't really exist, but the field lines themselves get closer together, and that increases the frequency as they resonate off each other as they go closer. And you can hear that actually as they go across the. If you're listening for them, they're called whistlers, I think, because of that, the way they move.
Yeah,
or the way they sound, I guess. But the field makes them spiral quicker as they get closer to the poles. And and I think that's very similar to the way that in the sun, the same thing happens when we can see the spherules that are coming out of the top of the sun. See, what we see as most of the activity of the sun is actually just the secondary induced effects, like the coronal loops and stuff. But we're not actually seeing the main magnetic field, like we don't really see the main magnetic field of the Earth type of thing or anything.
That, I mean, it's kind of similar to near field, far field, right? If you how they break that down with antennas, because it's always the near field is always the most chaotic, right? And then as you go wide, then you get kind of a lot of coherency.
I've noticed the same thing when they were talking about it in I was listening to a guy who studies vortexes named Konstantin Meyl, and he was showing that. He goes, "See, listen, we can hear the antenna here, and we can hear it here, but watch this." And he brings it right up beside the antenna, and it went away. He's like, I'm right beside this thing, and you can't hear it. Why? And then he was explaining that the waveform isn't even fully formed yet. It's still twisting. It's vortexing right near the antenna, and I was wondering if that is sort of similar to the like how we have dead spaces in fluorescent lights or in crux tubes. You can see how there's I guess called the anode space, and then a cathode space, and then there's little spaces along the tube that are. It's just not.
We start to. I mean, it's almost. I mean, there might be a leap, of course, but it's like you can kind of see this like nodding that can potentially happen as you get close, and then if you expand it out, it could be like how a plasmoid happens, because it's like if you think of stretching you wind up a rubber band, and then as you let it close in, they all knot up, right? If you let the tension on the whole thing go, it knots, But it's kind of that similar idea, I think, just because of the tension.
I would love to see some of this this type of like if I'm just imagining the north. This is the North Pole of the Earth, but it could also be the basis of the Sprite Elf situation too. I don't know exactly what I'm looking at, but.
Just the solar.
Oh, this is solar, even. Wow.
Yes. Solar chromosphere.
Wow. I was actually thinking of that as auroras on Earth.
Illustration.
Or because remember, elves are big rings, and then there's sprites, which are the red things. I could envision them in between that. I said, imagine cranking that up and taking a peek, and doing laboratory experiments. It'd be neat to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there. See what I mean? The ring and
the rings really show, right?
Oh yeah, but they're a different color usually.
Yeah. Usually. And they're perfectly horizontal. Generally
speaking, I think they think of them as a big. I think of them as the secondary induced current, like we saw around the Waterman. Like energy is going through it, and that's sort of like a rotating ring current. That was it's only there for a second, because you can see in the videos that they're just like pow, and they're there and they're gone. Obviously, all of these things are very transitory. But
right.
Or nuclear bombs, same.
Yeah.
Thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are just touching on this. And,
yeah. It's really fun of getting into, you dive into, all those different production stuff with Unity, and it's a method of drawing ultimately, but it's like playing around with this kind of stuff that you can generate kind of on the fly, and how they work. But the tools to illustrate this kind of stuff are suddenly available to the masses really readily, and that's pretty interesting. So, because that enables, instead of going into a high level, really exclusive production studio where they have to spend millions of dollars to get this type of visualization, you can do it, in your basement. The basement dwellers could do it. So.
What I see in events like this is, I try to, I mean, just the human-like feeling of it. These, if they could be sustained for any length of time, the choir of angels comes to mind.
You certainly get a ring on biological type of ideas. And I hear that. I hear that too.
I would be standing back, and if I saw something like this in the sky, even if it wasn't related to planets, even if it's just a strong storm somewhere and whatever, and it's like, I saw an angel and it said this to me. How would you not? There's obviously some very interesting things if they could be sustained.
What kind of it's something in that side. I mean, you look up in the sky and you see something that is just massively in scale. It impresses your psyche pretty heavily.
Oh, definitely, yes. And they wouldn't be able to see those storms that were underneath them, like they could be over the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, they describe those with the loops and the. I mean, that's when you start getting into the idea of what they were looking at and describing, and that's the more recent stuff. I try to take a step back and imagine going way, way back into the Clash of the Titans. Could you imagine if they lived in a beautiful world, everything's cool and chill, and then suddenly it got blasted, and then they had to, even if they were completely just like us in intellect and didn't have the Julian Jaynes-esque bicameral mind, they certainly could fall back into that. People would become believers because of fear faster than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you say no, that's not what you think it is. Those are electric discharges in the atmosphere. No, that's God talking to me. Stop saying that, or I'll kill you with a stick. Okay, I'm gonna go now.
Yeah.
Because if you can't fight that, it's very powerful.
You look at the cyclic nature of things. You start looking. I mean, it starts bringing back into like the musical ideas pretty quick. Where there's tension. You create tension to create a resolution, and then it has a lot of analogies to this function, right? But the thing that you start seeing out of it are like over time, over our historical time, you see these tensions that build up, and then they're released into some new, what paradigm, blah blah blah, whatever it is. There's kind of a seeking, a buildup of tension, and then a seeking of a release of that tension. So, and you start seeing it in these kind of big, long scale events. Wow. Sorry for that. That's on
That's quite all right.
But yeah. So anyway, once again, here's our harmonic resonance on a large scale working. So.
Well, and that doesn't even count what it would be like if we weren't on the same course that or anything like that was changing. Because if the energy was at a point where it could vibrate the Earth. Or make the rocks piezoelectrically vibrate, so you could hear it, which seems to be the case in sometimes where they could hear these things. I envision a situation where if other planets came near, they would interfere with our plasmasphere, create sounds, things we could hear, and it's true today that they do have their own sounds, in the sense that. If you could hear the frequency they would make, each planet's completely different. Some are hauntingly beautiful, and some are very scary sounding.
Mm-hmm.
The Earth itself has a very interesting sound too. Sounds like angels and whistles or something. I don't know.
Right. I mean, but once again, it's like we're only perceiving it through this small window.
Oh yes.
Of like the entire sound that's coming out, and we respond to it just like to tones, just clear sine waves.
Even if we can't hear them,
when you combine them, we respond to they have an emotional impact.
Well, and I think this
like a minor third has a different emotional impact than a major third.
Well, that's what makes music awesome.
What's up with that though?
I honestly don't know, but I'll tell you, it's very true. I mean, it doesn't matter what language you're speaking. If you hear La Promosa by Mozart, I know the feelings you're feeling, unless you are completely dead inside, because I'm feeling them too. And I don't speak whatever language he spoke. I don't have a clue.
Right, but I mean, you look at. I mean, it's very. You look at this. The canon of music as it goes over time, and it's a window into what's going on in the collective psyche or the spirit of the collective, And it's very interesting. The one's in reaction to the other, And very often it builds up, and then there's too much of that, so we got to get the opposite in order to balance it. It's seeking its lowest energy configuration in some way, But you can see this with the classics building up into the late 1800s, and it's like all this great order, structure and stuff, and then it gets confronted with just the chaos of the 12-tone rows of Schoenberg and Stravinsky, and it was a violent clash, really. It did change the culture radically. But once again, I think it's like it went too far one direction and then had to balance out the other way. So anyway,
No.
probably going on a tangent there.
So what was so Buddy's thinking about basically making something, which is probably probably almost necessary now to think about is the link between. I mean, we've mused about it here on the show a few times, but the link between plasma, vibration, sound, and things like the platonic solids and the tree of life and or flower of life motifs, and basically sacred geometry
and Terence's stuff, because it all ties into that.
Well, that's what I mean. There's one cannot deny that, and it might be supposition, but it seems very clearly that there is a link between these ideas, and the shapes themselves. Like I've mentioned before, something that always struck me as possible was, and I could never understand why they did this. We have a situation where, let's say you're at a church, they have the sensor with the what's it called? I can't remember the name. Fragrant stuff, that's smoke. I don't know, potpourri. What am I thinking of?
Oh, incense?
Thank you. My God, how did I lose that word? Anyway, so the incenses go down. They're walking up and down the aisle. Okay, so they're creating a dusty plasma in the air. And now these people sing and resonate the chamber that they're in. And could they make, could they make forms? Could they, just like you would if you had a tonoscope and sand? You know what I mean? Like, could they make platonic solids in the air using these vibrational characteristics? I know that sounds far-fetched, but not nearly as far as it would have been. You could even envision them changing the tone of a pyramid and making the symbol on top of it change. Things like that.
Right.
Right. And then that sounds, and it almost seems the whole ridiculous and Lord of the Rings.
I know. For me too. I would not have entertained these thoughts 5 years ago for sure, and I would have called anyone entertaining them nuts. So that's actually I could say that pretty honestly. But you start looking at language and voice, and what voice is, how voice impacts us in many ways. It's the experience of understanding language through pronunciation and vocalization of something is totally different than reading it.
Well, yes, and
you have to go through a fairly significant transmutation of information to go from reading to explaining it. And then the process of writing it is a pretty serious, whatever. Transmutation may not be the right word to use. It's quite a significant shift of perspective and approach.
Oh yes, you can. Well, we can find somebody's reading entertaining, but or someone's writing entertaining, but you could listen to someone say gibblygook if their voice is beautiful. You wouldn't care what they're saying. Just keep talking.
Well,
it could be music.
Yeah, that's the visual. The visual starts playing.
Well, that's what I mean. And there's obviously an additional emotional impact.
Right.
Yeah. I think that it's probably something that we're. I mean, I guess the crowd would be kind of small to start with. I mean, you're going to get a lot of sacred geometry in there. And the trouble with the geometry part, and not to put it down, but in any sort of thing that involves sacred geometry, numerology, and those aspects, although sometimes I am often surprised at the coincidences that pop up here and there, the mechanism is generally unknown on how it works, and how would it know this? Is there actually something hidden, that we could tap into under the currents? And that's the whole the idea of the Akashic record or universal consciousness type of ideas, which I'm not there yet, but I can't necessarily say no, I'm absolutely against, because clearly there are people smarter than me, like Rupert Sheldrake, coming to this conclusion, and he's explained it to me, and I've gone all the way to the point where I go, okay, that's never thought of it that way. But is that a matter of perception? Are we doing that? Does it take into account, like if someone gets half of their brain removed, they're a different person? Do they still have access to this, or what's going on here? Brain injury. I didn't mean that. Someone scooping brains out.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is where it starts breaking down the paradigm, and then there's a threat to it too. And that's this is where we get into the high impedance level of what we're exploring. Because it gets into what is consciousness, and then is it foo-foo or voodoo or whatever,
right.
So, but the other piece of it is this: you start looking at things in these rotational symmetry. This guy, I had heard of him, but I over the weekend I was checking him out a little bit more. Arthur Young, are you familiar with him at all? He's the Bell helicopter guy. This is it. Actually, he was the guy who, and here's a prime example of someone who took like an idea from like what's going on with the mechanism and getting, it's Vinci was looking at it, but this guy pulled it off, right?
Right.
But he's all into this esoterica. It was surprising. It was like all the stuff that we're talking about, and harmonics and stuff. And he was looking at it back in the day, and he's there. So there's actually historical. There is footing, to go on with this. So, anyway, he's pretty fascinating, but certainly in that area where many people would consider his discussion woo woo. So.
Well, so a lot of people think that Sheldrake's still woo woo too. So.
Yeah.
But they don't lose their logical coherence.
Right. And that's the big challenge.
Well, yeah, and it's
I certainly lose it at times, as you're well aware. So.
Well, there's another gentleman who made an analogy that I thought was very interesting when they compared human beings to TV sets.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying
about that.
Clearly that if you were to given a television set and you were to look at a television set, and it was connected to nothing except for it was powered, could you tell if the images on the television set were coming from the TV or were coming from a broadcast that was being intercepted by the TV?
Mm-hmm.
And unless you knew the circuitry and you knew everything that's going on, you broke it down to constituent parts and figured out what the antenna does and all that stuff. Unless you have that already built into you, good luck.
Right.
It's something that an engineer might be.
You're going to think it's inside of it.
Yeah, well, it would be the first logical choice.
Yeah.
I mean, if you saw a car going down the road, you don't think, oh yeah, well that's powered by, Sirius or something. It wouldn't make sense. So,
mm-hmm.
And I think we talked about this before, how bad the Turks were, or whoever they were that invaded Rome or Byzantine, and they came in and they took the faucets off the wall, thinking they could put them on a wall somewhere else and water would come out.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing.
Okay, right. Yeah.
You don't understand. There's
cargo cult. You've heard the cargo cults back in after the
Korean and Vietnam War.
Pacific Islands and everything, after they did the tests, and they had it's interesting shots of what the natives did, as far as they wanted everyone to come back, because typically we come in and we corrupt the culture and then leave. Well, you often don't leave, but in this case we left. And they missed us. Let's see the car. There's some classic photographs of it.
Oh, I know. And in a way, Star Trek Beyond did the same thing.
Feynman talked about it a lot.
Well, it's but it really happened, and it's a modern example.
They built these like this thing. That's classic. Yeah.
Wow.
Right. Why doesn't it fly?
Especially given the nature of quote unquote the what was it called, the way the gods were capricious. In stories, I meant. I mean, would not every building and every statue be in a way a cargo cult, trying to lure them back in a way?
Well, it's like there's something that's ringing that's kind of we don't know what it is, and it's like it's frightening, or it's dreams. I had this in a dream. That's a whole other
right
crazy rabbit hole, right? But you want to visualize it and then manifest it in this reality, that kind of thing. But
this is blowing me away. Just look at these pictures,
It's wild, isn't it? I mean,
look at the goggles. Look at the radar dish.
I don't know if these are real. But this one's real. This one's an actual. But I'm sure they made jokes about it. I can't. That one is hard to swallow.
Well, I know. If they are real, I don't. I'll leave that. But. It is the...
Maybe. I don't know. With this?
I just envision what this would have been for... for example, there's pyramids all around the world. If you went to Egypt and saw the real ones, and then you went somewhere else, would you... or you saw them in the sky, would you build them out of mounds out of dirt, like we have in Ohio, or... is it just similar? Is it that type of thing? Stonehenge, is that just an image of looking up the northern polar plume and just seeing the rings and going, aha, build it this way?
Right. I mean, that's a good example of something where there's this map, and we do our own onto it, right? Perhaps, if you want to get critical or maybe skeptical, where it's like there's. Was that a kind of cargo cult reference to the building of it, to something that they saw, and then are we mapping onto them something? You see how you can get into like a crazy dance of idiots on it, potentially. Right?
I wonder if we're going to be able to look back at fashion trends and see the way that the Earth's vibration has changed our minds, because what we thought looked cool.
Yeah.
Well, we are only beginning to study that. So,
well, there's a whole different. I mean, I've been around for a while now, but there's a whole different spirit of like how the collective looks at things, because they look at like what the '80s were and then what the '60s were. It's totally different than what it is now. I mean, that's a very high level look at it. It certainly has a different tone to it than it did back in
the day,
the '60s. Back in the day, when we were old school. Yeah.
See, these guys obviously don't have hairstyle issues.
No,
they're cool.
No, that's the thing. Yeah,
but there's also this the idea that we would change. Oh, that's Burning Man, I think.
Yeah.
In a way, that's a cargo cultish type of thing.
It is
too.
right. Exactly. I mean, it's fun, right?
Of course.
No judgments. And it raises some interesting things that go on within our, I mean, that would be quite an event to attend, I would say,
Well, I've been invited, but I don't know. Because, I mean, what would I don't know what I'd be caring about or what I'm supposed to do. Is it just a party
really
or am I learning something?
It's supposed to get really, really high.
Yeah, but
but it's high creativity, right? It's Dionysian.
Doing something in yeah, I know Dionysian, that's good. But doing something in public is just not usually my thing. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I'll jump off that bridge when I get to it.
What was it like? Did you go to a circus when you were a kid?
Oh yeah.
It's what the three-ring circus. There's all kinds of, like within that thing, the ritual of that thing. There's a whole bunch of alchemy.
I also know though that we
were. I mean, you remember what we were talking about, the pomp and circumstance. That's another example of a type of pomp and circumstance as an event, a circus. Yeah.
Should I wear a toga? I should wear a toga.
Well, how's it make you feel when you go? Right? It's about emotions. It's all about emotions.
Okay. I'll try to figure that out. Did you find what you were looking for? Or answer it the U2 way? Yeah, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Right.
Still haven't.
Look, this thing is bringing us to the edge.
By the way, Neil, I'm enjoying our back and forth here. This is pretty fun. So, thank you.
I don't know if anyone else is, but yeah.
Yeah. Please, anyone, feel free to jump in. Yeah. I don't know. Is it just Neil and I at this point?
Apparently.
No, we've been listening to YouTube going on.
Okay. All right. All right. I'll put this out.
I'm back, by the way.
Oh, good.
Yay!
Hey! We're getting lonely over
What you talking about?
Cargo pelts. Cargo pelts.
Cargo. Yeah. Well, we have one big cargo boat, right?
See, that's what I was just saying myself. See, I knew you'd agree. Edwin always has my back. He would have ripped you apart about the scientific shit.
We tend to agree quite a bit.
Well,
the other day I heard that episode which I did not participate in. I heard you guys talking, and I almost grabbed the mic, like, I want to talk because it's so familiar, right? Like we're talking there,
arguing, yeah.
And I go like, and I typed to Neil, fucking agree with you there. What did I agree with? There is one real truth, right? Ultimately.
Well, there is definitely the idea of an objective reality. I totally see the measurement idea, but Dave was right. It has to do with is it the perceiving of what measurements are and stuff. But at the same time, we do have to recognize that there's we can think of things in multiple ways. Like we think this glass is, or my table here was made of glass and it's solid, but yet there's also technically made up of just molecules which are vibrating, and technically nothing's even still, technically, right? Like I was like, okay, well I can see it those ways, but when it comes right down to it, you still want to make sure your math is right when you build that airplane, right? So,
yeah. But it's also this very like human centric. It's all about our perception, because I can think of the fun, just for fun and fantasy. Like I could build a microscope. I could build a microscope that's like the diameter of a lens is 3 times the diameter of the Earth, right? And you could actually build that thing, and you would get information out of it depending on what the materials are. But the measurement would have for us it would have no value, right? But it might have value
to some giant extragalactic being.
In some objective sense, right? In some objective sense, it might. Do you see what I'm saying? It's all because we're very, and it's survival, right? But the recognition that that's the case is important.
We're locked to our scale.
I'm playing around with, when I build things, it's always this crazy time scale, and you got to bring it into a perceptible time scale, and it's a very small window that you have to tweak that into from where it's operating to get it so you can interact with it or get any kind of perception out of it, And that's changing the time scale. But you think of that slice of movement, like this thing moves from X to Y in a second or half a second, right? If I just take that like 2 orders of magnitude down, you're not going to see it. And if I took it 2 orders of magnitude up, it'll be so slow you won't wait to see it.
Yeah, that does make sense. This is the problem where I was talking about, like, I can't really head into quantum because I don't have enough familiarity with it.
But it's so distant, it's exotic, but at the same time, it might be right in front of our face. You see?
Well, there you go. And there's a part of me that also, when I think of all the, like, if I could just turn the time scale up and step out from, say, the Earth, and I can move. This is usually easier for me to go the other direction because I think about space a lot more. But if I could sort of step myself out of the off the Earth and move myself to give myself a view of the solar system and the local galactic cloud, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I
Is
just
this
hear a
coming through
noise.
loud? I have a. Yeah, it's me.
Oh.
Now
it's you?
Crazy. Now it's me.
It's
I
okay.
have this crazy construction, so
It's okay.
I'll try to mute it.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to edit that out.
How loud is it?
Oh, it was just surprising there for a second. Don't worry about it. It's not fun.
I've got like 5 cement trucks and cranes and right outside my door. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But anyway, what I meant was if I could then step out of that, and as you know, Jim has described this cloud, and we've seen some pictures of the cloud, which we are pretty sure is actually just part of a current we can see. We could then turn up the speed, and if I could turn up the speed to a certain extent, to me that would become solid. The solar system would look like a nucleus in there doing its thing, and they would look like tubes. And because of the speed of the forces are going so fast compared to, say, if I was like a giant extragalactic being looking at this, if I tried to touch it, it would be solid. It'd be like either a branch or like something like that, or even like maybe even a flexible tube that might slightly bend if I hit it. Because of that nature, and then you wonder, are all veins and stuff like that, when you go inside the human body, if you could slow it down, would they just be, plasma vibrations type of idea? Like that's what I'm kind of thinking about. Time scaling with distance and so forth to give us what is real.
Right. I mean, this is where Juan I would love to get on, and talk, because he's really fascinating with his ideas, And he ultimately he was my initiator into like the details of electric universe. And this rarefication compression is a fundamental start there. And it's like this, and then, then our lowest energy state right in the center. And that's there's a lot that can be built on that foundation.
Yeah, I think even with like the solar system, like if you were willing to view that whole dynamic, speed it up in time to where you couldn't even see where a planet was, all you would have is orbitals with more likelihood of finding a planet at a certain place, and then you have the same framework that we have in at the atomic level, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same thing. Like it just treating time scales as they're proportional to size scales, and you end up with the same dynamics.
Mm-hmm. And these are all this. I mean, then it gets into these conics, the conic sections. You look at the two. The classic one you learn in geometry and never spend enough time with are the two cones touching each other on the tips, right? You look at it vertically, right? Remember that one, right?
Right.
That diagram where you slice it in the different ways, and you get the circle, and you get the ellipse, and the parabola, and hyperbola. Right? So that thing is obviously fundamental, but it's a great another great jumping off point with that in mind, with the scale in mind, and time.
I'm just sucked into your the images that you had on the screen there.
Oh, Descartes? Yeah. Oh, the one before.
But I'm fine with Descartes. Go ahead, throw him up there. That's cool too.
Yeah. Well, he's the one that kind of. I mean, this is the. Speaking of Julian James, etc., bicameral mind, but that's the event. It goes into detail about this is where the split goes, and this is kind of the thing that this is one of the underlying big bell tones that Sheldrake is ringing.
He looks thoroughly unimpressed with us.
He looks very French to me.
He looks very
French. He's typical French looking.
Yeah, with the eyes are like a little disdain almost.
Okay, come on.
Well,
You're talking to me?
You're talking. yeah, that's different. Yeah, the hero's a little different.
What?
You're talking to me. No, this is more like, I don't know if you're worthy. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's talking about, these coming up again. And once again, look, I mean, the chemical aspect of the geometries that, kind of playing around with these things that, I've dove into kind of on, on Terrence's pointing, and it's fascinating. You start finding these just really fundamental, fundamental geometries that are all over the place, and then you begin to question how we're perceiving things.
Well, you can question, but sometimes we also make huge mistakes, like that guy implying that a circle is the C's and the H's, and in actuality, those C's have to be connected in 3 dimensions, not 2.
Right. See.
So there's obviously more to that.
Yeah. See, and then we often deify the tool, right? So we got illustration. It's 2D, so everything became 2D. It's when you have a hammer, everything looks like the nail.
Is this what the world looks like when you ate mushrooms or something? I mean, trolls and elves.
Oh, these.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah. It's not. Yeah, I didn't do mushrooms. I did mescaline and LSD.
I like the symbolism that has been carried on. You can even tell, even though this is just a regular drawing. I mean, it even has the stairway to heaven in the middle and all that stuff. And how much symbols, even here, the symbols carried on from years and years and years ago.
Right.
They've reached back, and they've morphed over time, obviously. But the symbols, I mean, I still remember the symbols that were my grandparents' house, and the old churches, and then, and that they're harking back to even older.
Yeah.
There is something about mushrooms,
there's one connection.
There's
the
a
mushroom.
Yeah. That's the Amadia muscaria mushroom. There's an argument made that they're the reason why Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer exists in the first place as a story, because these things grow underneath pine trees at a certain time of year, and they're tasty, but the reindeer would eat them, and then they would fall down and just be like totally messed up, and they'd have a red nose because they were eating them.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.